Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast, focused on providing valuable information for anyone looking to undertake a new build or extension project. We'll share our tips, tricks and stories from a building designer's perspective.
Welcome to the Building Design Primetime Podcast. I'm your host Amelia, and once again we're joined by Frank Pickersgill.
G'day everyone.
And we've got some special guests on today.
This is exciting.
It is very exciting. We've got Trish and Heather on board from the Scribble Club. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
Pretty good. Hi. Now Heather, you're zooming in from the Big Island.
Yes, the mainland.
Yes.
Up the northern part of northern New South Wales, and it's pretty nice and warm, I have to say, just to rub it in a little bit.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that.
Thanks a lot. We're looking at pretty awful, disgusting weather today.
That's the only way to describe it.
It's lovely for the ducks.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's one of your sayings, isn't it, Frank?
Yeah.
It's perfect for the ducks outside.
So tell us, Trish, a little bit more about what the Scribble Club is.
We're an online portal, so we like to help educate people in regards to their own renovations or extensions and even new homes, in helping make the good design choices up front. And some of our big core things is planning, and also talking about budget, good passive solar design, and also just ways that we can make our homes healthier, not only physically but also mentally.
And what about yourself, Heather? What's your role in the Scribble Club?
Yeah, so Trish and I founded the Scribble Club. I'm an architect, have been for 25 odd years, and ran large commercial practice on the eastern seaboard of Australia. But once I had my child, and I do contract work, but what we're really looking at is bridging the gap between when women either have their children and want to come back into doing renovations, or where there's a knowledge gap, where they've lost a bit of confidence, or they're keen, they like decorating, but they're just not sure where to start. So what we decided to do is create a podcast called the Sketchy Ladies Podcast, and that is all about just education. So in our industry, we have a lot of acronyms, a lot of words that is a totally different language. So I liken it to when you go to the hospital and there's a chart on the end of the bed and you have no idea what all those letters and words mean. You just want to know whether you're going to be all right or not. So we've taken the same philosophy, is to really debunk some of the myths and tone down the language so that it's very, very simple for people to understand, so that they don't feel silly asking questions and they can really get a handle on what it is that they need to do. So even just in a kitchen, there's so many different terminologies of all the different things, the splashbacks and all sorts of toe kicks and things like that, that's a half a commonplace to people that haven't had any experience with that. It's really about understanding that language and giving them a guide so the first 20 episodes of our podcast is all about all the different individual rooms within your home, so that you can go through, if you just want to renovate a bathroom, for example, you can listen to the bathroom episode, and then you can join us in the Scribble Club if you want to actually get into doing it, so more hands-on kind of stuff. And we're looking at an online community largely based around women, because we think that women have a great potential. A lot of them have a lot of design flair. They just don't know where to start when they want to undertake a project. So I got together with Trish, and a building designer and architect combination is very, very rare in our industry. There's usually a great dividing line between the two, and we just thought that in itself is not right either. So we really enjoy the fact that we come from different perspectives, and we're both learning so much from each other, because what I think is commonplace in industry for the type of documents I might present can be totally different to the sort of things that she does. She comes at it from a different angle. So it gives us a really holistic perspective about looking at particularly residential design, and just something, and it is a little bit different to commercial, obviously, but it's all about making the place right for the people themselves. And I think in industry, this is where sometimes we lose sight of it. There's a lot of architects out there that want to build big, grandiose homes that are 4 times people's budgets, that look magnificent so they can win an award in a magazine, and it actually doesn't suit the client very much. So that's one thing that we're really focused on, is really making it practical and healthy and tuned to the person for their specific needs. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
That's awesome.
That was a very detailed answer. It's very impressive, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very cool, Heather.
And I guess too,
No worries.
that's the reason why kind of we started the Building Design Primetime podcast as well, because there is just so much that you don't get taught in school, you don't get taught anywhere when it comes to choosing a block of land or, you know, designing a new bathroom or anything like that. Because there's so much that goes into it and so many technical terms and so much legislation out there. You just don't get taught these sort of things or even where to look.
And who to ask
No,
for the
and
right advice.
Exactly. And the other thing I just want to point out, the difference in personality between the way females and males approach things as well, because I think there was that great book, Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, that sort of thing. But, for example, if two people going for a job interview and there was a selection criteria, men will go for a job interview with less than 50% of the criteria fulfilled. Women want 95 to 100% of that criteria before they'll even attempt to go for a job. So it's exactly the same thing when they come to doing a renovation or design. Unless they have the confidence level of the 90 to 95%, they probably won't start anything in the first place. So that's where we're saying, look, get your education level up to a point where you're not feeling silly, and we're very open. So we're like, there's no silly questions. What we want you to do is ask the questions before you make a mistake, because what we see a lot in industry is a small mistake at the front end in the planning stage is a huge mistake at the back end. We've got a friend in Sydney who's renovating a house, and there was a sewer main that ran through the back of the yard, $31,000 just to cover over concrete encased that sewer main before they've even got out of the ground, before they've even touched their renovation. So we're talking big dollars, and that's the sort of thing that we're trying to prevent. Is we're saying, if you had people that are involved who could locate those services for you, there's a really good chance that that could have been dealt with prior to having this exorbitant bill that means now you potentially can't do your renovation. So it's fixing mistakes before they happen is the way we like to look at what we're doing as well.
That's great.
Preventative measures.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good planning, good research. We talk about research all the time, but it's just all good planning, isn't it, to then be fully aware of the extent of the works.
I think confidence from a female's point of view is actually one of the things that we want to help instill, and through education we can get that. And like Heather said, we want to know that, be at that 95% before we start pulling a piece of plaster off the wall or taking tiles off the splash mat.
Whereas us guys, I'll have a look at this, and just then you've torn the thing apart. Oh crap, now what do I do?
What's that saying? Ask for forgiveness later? Or
Yeah, pretty well, and that's usually from the wife.
Yeah. Yes, I think education is part of our biggest thing, and planning is something that we've always done, and is a natural for us as designers and architects that we want to do. That's our first thing. That's that we go and look at all the background, the inside, outside, upside down is what we talk about it. So there's sort of steps and things that we take. So providing confidence to females in the industry is one of our biggest challenges. Dealing with trades can be really scary.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally can understand that. It can be scary for the blokes too sometimes.
Yeah, well, some women can be a bit like that, especially if we walk in with all the knowledge and the confidence, we know what we're dealing with, but then that can rub people up the wrong way too. So it's about the approach of it.
Oh, yeah, totally agree, especially with the approach, because all you need is Eddie the expert telling you, and he just, thinks he knows everything and just tells a load of porkies. Well, it's just true. I've had to deal with tradesmen that do that, or, they're full of it.
Yeah, that's true. It's so true. And it's really intimidating, I find. And I've, some of my stories, and Heather's got some horrific stories of being on site. But what we want to do is push them, promote what is happening for the good for women in the industry. Yeah. Like more and more females are being employed in trades, more and more females are in that leadership role, which I think is really important. And that's something that I've always reflected on you, Frank, is your employment of women in the industry, and your support of other women in the industry has been fantastic. And it's also always made it comfortable for me to come and approach someone, and also given me the strength to talk to other men in the industry too, knowing that I've got someone backing me, and whether it's a man or a female, I don't really care.
Yeah. Oh, look, I've looked at it. It doesn't matter if it's a male or female. We're all in this together. But, we've come across some pretty ordinary situations and having to deal with men just not what seem to think it has to be a certain way by their, it's the way they've always done it, and it's wrong.
Yeah, yeah.
It's completely wrong. And trying to then convert that into a positive situation didn't always work either. So and some of it backfired. But, yeah, for me, employing lots of women in the office, as I said, it's always been a case of the people I employ are the best people that I found to join my team.
At the time, for the job role that's involved.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it's been proven. You know, I haven't got the business to where it is now. It's not me, it's the whole team.
And the growth of those individuals in that space as well.
Yeah.
Massively. And I attribute to a lot of my growth is that in that support as well. Something I've come across on site a fair bit, sorry Heather there, but something I've come across is the shift of people's mentality behind accepting women, and I've definitely in the younger generation I've seen a real change there, because they're also working with women on site a lot more, so they've had to change their thought processes.
Very much so.
So I was just going to say, to Frank's point, what I'm all about is equity. So we're not feminists saying, standing there and banging your hands saying we want more females to be employed for the females' sake. What we're saying is we just want to be treated equally as anyone. And we're also a big advocates of accessibility and inclusivity, universal design. So universal design is an interesting concept that I wouldn't mind touching on. So universal design is all about being applicable for anybody. And what we're finding in Australia is we have an ageing population and we've got people with disabilities, a lot of the NDIS work. So universal design is great for everybody. And so one of the things Trish and I are looking at is really talking to people about longevity in terms of if they are doing a house, how they might travel through that house over the ages. So we're not in a throwaway society for houses yet. We live in houses for quite some time. And so aging in place is a really big thing, and also design. So interestingly enough, the standards, as you'd be aware, for disability or accessibility is almost the same as it is for aging in place. And so we can actually design that into our homes now so that further down the track, if there's an injury or somebody's older, it makes it a far more utilisable space. And it's also great for resale too, because if you've already factored all that sort of thing in, you've opened your market right up. As soon as you've got inaccessible houses, that cuts a lot of the market out because we do have an older population. So they're the sorts of things that we're looking at as well. And one of my favourite things with Dylan Alcott being the Australian of the Year, his thing, and this is where I come back to equity, was all about, I just want to go to a sporting event with my mate and be able to have a beer sitting next to him. And we're a bit the same. We're like, I just want to be a female in the construction industry, sit next to the bloke that I'm working with and have a good old chat about everything. So I think we just need to be clear that we're not standing up on a soapbox going, we need to be equal. We're just saying, we just want to hang out. And a lot of the young tradies
That's a good way to put it.
I think it's a great way of putting it. Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. Yeah. And me personally, is I see a lot more women in positions of leadership. You touched on that before. That's been lacking a lot, and because I'm heavily involved in the BDAA as well, and we've been pushing hard for that as well, because there's a lot to offer. There's so many people got so much to offer in those leadership roles, and in trying to encourage. It's always been a male-dominated area in the leadership of associations, groups, and all that. It's trying to push forward and encourage women to come and join that as well. And that, I believe, I know in our association, that's shifting massively.
Good.
And the challenge is people finding time to volunteer to do this, and that's the other side of it, because it is a volunteer association. It's really hard to ask for that extra time, especially when you're running your own business, if you're lucky enough to have a family or not, or whatever your case may be. It is hard to find time to volunteer.
I think part of that stigma of it being quite a male-dominated area has slowed people down in putting themselves forward, so especially women, and even some people, the younger people, regardless of male or female, is having that ability or confidence to step forward and put themselves out there. And I think there's definitely a shift. And something I have seen from a female point of view, kids coming out of school and not sure if they want to get in the industry. And it's a confidence thing, or it's that stigma that's been around for a long time. They're not seeing the shift only because they're not in it and seeing the shift. There has been a big shift, and I'm so proud of that. To say that some of the people I've worked with on site have just been brilliant. Like, I've seen some really awful ones, and even recently, but some of they're just seeing that shift, and I want to help spread that to the next generation that's coming into design, because I think that's really important, is that they can comfortably get into the industry and know that they can excel.
And it's not just design too, because I'm starting to see it in geotechnical investigation. I'd like to see it more in surveying. These are all technical fields. Engineering, that's still very lacking, structural, civil, there's a bit, mechanical, electrical, it'd just be awesome to see it. And they're great industries to be in, but I think some of those are on the decline anyway, because they're not seem to be the exciting things. But well, I love all that stuff. In our industry, we deal with all these people, and it's an essential part of building design, and also in architecture, commercial, residential, doesn't matter. All these are essential, and there's great positions there, and it's really interesting work.
Yeah, the education side of it needs to push females forward to get into that.
The problem now in a lot of the states, and I use surveying as one, they're shutting down courses all over the country because there's not enough people interested.
Even in interior design.
Is
locally,
it really?
yeah, the interior design local course has been closed down. So there's just no teachers attracted to the space
engineering
either.
drafting as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's real
Why is
disappointing.
that? That's really odd.
Lack of take-up.
Really? And that's all it is, just lack of... But surely they're promoting it. Maybe they need to promote it harder.
Well, there's so many other choices, but there are more... for us, it's interesting, but for the younger generations, it may not be as interesting for them.
But in saying that, are you seeing, or in your industry, or in your experience, are you seeing more mature people coming back to those industries?
I have seen it in surveying, more in building design. I've seen more of it. I saw some in geotechnical, some older guys getting into it. Yeah.
And a lot is online now too. So
that's if you like that type of thing. I like being in a classroom. I like interaction online.
I'd have to agree with that myself too. Yeah.
So one of the big things that's really important that we need to acknowledge is the change in technology as well. And so technology will drive our industry faster and faster, but where the education is not caught up with that is that it's a long process to get properly professionally qualified. So, for example, the architecture course is a 6-year course, plus you've got a 2-year effectively internship before you sit your exam, before you can even call yourself an architect. So for a lot of the younger generations, with everything's instantaneous at the moment, so whatever they in their phones, everything's high speed. So to actually have to sit there for 8 years before you can even be qualified, I think is a huge barrier. And it's something as an industry we need to start looking at more like an apprenticeship, I believe, whereby you're doing more practical stuff on site. And unfortunately, particularly in architecture, it's still quite stoic and still quite hierarchical in the way that the boards and everything are constructed to keep it very elite. But the problem is we've got practitioners dropping out at a rapid rate for all sorts of reasons. Insurance premiums are escalating, stress is high, lack of good experienced staff, all those sorts of things are having a massive impact. And unless we change the whole way we're looking at educating people to be coming through, we're going to have a huge gap in a few years. The buildings still need to be built, people are still being born, our populations are growing. And so I think it will really need to go back to being more, like you said, the hands-on type skill in education. And I know in the past there has been methods of doing that through the education, but it's not really it's difficult to do, and they seem to not be very proactive at a administration level, the very top of government level, to be wanting to change it. But I think it's going to have to change because we're just going to end up running out of experienced people. So I'm not sure if you're seeing that sort of similar thing in building design, Trish, but I would imagine it's probably quite similar.
Yeah, a little bit. Like AI is something that I know that BDAA is running some information on in regards to how that's going to affect us in our industry. So artificial intelligence is going to be a new game to play with, I reckon.
Yeah, but also, as you're saying, the training, like we've looked at different ways of getting new team members in, and we just had one recently that started with no experience, and they went and put themselves through an online building design course, did a great job, and that worked pretty well, learning on the job. And I think that's what you're talking about, Heather, that you do like a traineeship, and then you're doing a bit of, whether it's going to be the architectural course or building design, and it could be for any of these consultants, if you want to look at that side of it as well. I believe we need to be quite flexible in how we do this, and it's finding the right people to do it. And I think you're right that some of the way the younger generations coming through, they look at, 8 years, seriously? But even when they come into the workplace and say working in place, learning the techniques and then doing school, and that's a hard slog, doing that part-time. I take my hat off to anyone that can do that. That's still even longer.
Raise a family.
And raise a family. And what I call super mums,
we are.
Doing that.
Every mum is.
100%. And how do we make that effective and keep the motivation going for that period of time? And as a business owner, I've got to look at how do I keep that level of motivation going.
And still make money.
That
is.
Right.
It's a hard thing to talk about sometimes, but that is the bottom dollar.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
Business owner.
But we should be able to work that in as running a business.
Yeah.
And, I've had to learn a lot on the way through, and I've made boo-boos myself, but you learn different ways to work around those problems.
That's right.
You know, but that education in place, I think, is going to be a big thing going forward, and we're going to work with those institutions to help us on that. But not everyone likes online. That's the big key thing.
And
the
I think
online's
that,
tough.
Well, I think that on the job is, and I've experienced that regardless of male or female, is being on the job and learning how design can be learnt. There are parts of it that has to be ingrained in your system, but there is also that learning process of that you can gauge and gather from people with experience is just, it's invaluable. Like it really is.
You've got to find that passion. I'm sure you have it too, Heather. You've got to have that passion to do this and to stay in this industry for a long period of time. You've really got to have the passion to bash your way through some of the stuff that keeps knocking you down.
Yeah, Heather's got a lot of background and experience in legislation, so her input there would be valuable too.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of work for a lot of different government departments. I particularly specialised in courts and legislative bodies and really looked at why the rules and procedures are in place. And really our legislations are there to be protective. So people fear a lot of the rules and regulations, but generally the reason they're there is because there's been a safety issue of some description. So there's been a massive reform in New South Wales over the last 12, 18 months with regard to Class 2 buildings, which is multi-residential buildings, because of all the issues they had with poor building practices where they've got, 30, 40-storey buildings that have got cracks through the middle of them that are failing and all sorts of catastrophes like that. So part of what happens with regulations and governance is that fixes some of the problems that have occurred and try and prevent that happening again. My fear is, though, that we're getting to a point now where, particularly in New South Wales, it's so highly regulated that nothing's going to get built. So it becomes that thing, and it's also, it goes in cycles with the economy as well. So I think with technology, that's where our out is. We've got 8-year-old kids that can build 3D animated games that they fly through at real time. Now, intrinsically, they're no different to the buildings that we're building in terms of making a 3D AI automated space that you can walk through before you've actually built it. And I know that with BIM, so our integration with our services and our architectural models has come a long way. But I think that the level of technology and the speed that technology is going, I see some of our really young kids almost leapfrogging over some of those intermediates almost straight into building 3D type models. So I see in the future the builders won't get plans. They'll have a 3D model that they can look at and say, oh, okay, that was the wall finish, that's where that position of that was supposed to be, all those sorts of things. And it's all done literally in this 3D model that they're walking through to be able to build it. So that's not too far down the track, I don't think. It's just that we have to get our heads around how we actually get the information from persons. So it's all about communication. So I design something, I need a builder to build it. How do I communicate exactly how that happens? And we all know a picture's worth 1,000 words. So the more graphically we can illustrate that, or the more three-dimensionally we can illustrate that, there's a better outcome in terms of communication with both the client and also with the builder. So it's something I'm always thinking about is how can we make our practices better and how can industry keep up with that? But unfortunately, industry is slow to move because it's a big beast. And so a lot of these regulations sort of tie things up for a while, then it gets released again, it becomes a bit easier. But we are in quite a period of change at the moment. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next 3, 5, 10 years in terms of integrating technology into our traditional service-based businesses, because I think you have to innovate. You innovate or die is always the same. So I think we're going to have to all innovate. Yeah, we're all going to have to innovate to try and get better outcomes and get better communication, because most issues that occur on site are through poor communication, either through drawings or errors or miscommunication. And so communication is key and all that sort of thing. So, Frank, you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I'm a big believer of good communication, especially with documentation, because I believe that's where the majority of failures have, and lack of consideration of all the other services and this quality checking that I banged on pretty hard.
Frank loves his quality checks.
I don't, but I look at it as good business in doing quality checks, and everyone checks everyone's work. It's
not kept close to our chest. It's always shared.
It's not secret squirrel. You share it. Get someone else to check it, review it. I get my stuff reviewed all the time.
Fresh eyes on a set of plans can provide a lot.
And I've seen so much poor documentation. I'm thinking, how the heck is a builder supposed to do this? How are they even supposed to price it out?
What's frustrating is the building surveyors accept it.
Yeah, and then or even the customer can't understand what they're getting or whatever. But, Heather, you talk about the 3D. I believe that can be wonderful, but it still comes down to that fundamental of all the consultants putting all their input together into one set of quality documents. And I can see in the future, we've got, like you say, you've got this 3D model, they've got visual goggles on, but you've got to be able to strip away the layers and each one and know exactly where everything is going at any time. So you're looking at it live, but then it gets updated live when there's a challenge, and that's how I see it's going. And I'm probably going to get motion sickness looking in these things.
I suppose it's a shift, like if you've seen over the generations, we've seen a shift from manual drafting, which is where I started. So I'm not that old, but that's where I started. I was doing 3D back then too.
Keep telling yourself that.
I was doing 3D encoding when I was at school. But yeah, that shift from manual drafting and has been really changed into our 3D modelling. And then we're going to see, so over our time, we're going to see 3 or 4 new generations of documentation over that time, not only planning changes, but how we present drawings or how it gets built.
But it means nothing if the communication's not there.
Yeah, if that breakdown has happened.
It's, as Heather said, if that is the key to everything of what we put together.
Yeah.
If you can't do it well, mistakes will happen, problems will happen, things will fail.
And I think that's something else that I'd like to touch on is people's ability to read drawings or have an understanding of spatial awareness. And personally, I found it can be women that actually understand that better in a way to a point. And there's something that we're actually sitting in a room right now where we've put on the wall, we put heights like of joinery and widths of rooms so that when we're showing a plan to a client, we can show them what that size or what that meterage means.
It's context.
Yeah, it is.
Context
it's context
of the
to
space.
scale. Yeah,
exactly.
So and I struggle to worry, and I wonder how that 3D is going to. It's going to help immensely in a lot of ways, but I also might think it might give a bit of false pretense to what's actually going to happen.
Totally agree. It's getting an understanding of that space because even currently with the goggles, it still got that distance challenge as well and that sense of feel of that, and that's where I think a good architect and designer can really get the rights. We know our numbers for spaces. You should know your numbers for spaces. If you're designing, bathrooms, kitchens, lounge rooms, dining, all sorts of stuff, you've got to know certain sizes that work well and also listening to the customer for their wants and needs to be able to fit exactly how they want it and how they want it to function and flow. And the 3D helps to a point, but you as a designer have to guide them through that journey. I've seen some great stuff done by, architects and designers, and they've understood these spaces really, really well. It's still getting across to all the other trades to get it right.
Yeah. And they've got to talk to each other. There's that communication between each of those trades.
It's like plasterers and electricians talking to each other. They'd rather hit each other with a hammer.
Yeah.
They're unbelievable, that mob.
Yeah, they don't bring the cables through the plaster very often. It's frustrating.
It's unbelievable. My son's an apprentice plasterer, so I hear it now at home.
Yeah. There's been a few holes we had to put in ourselves because it wasn't brought through. So, but that's something that back to the communication again is that I've seen a change in the trades. So we might be having on site an electrician, and they go through and they snapshot everything. They take a photo of everything before they leave site, so that they know what's there when what's done, so they can return back. That comes back to that technology. That
it also comes down to that not being lazy.
Yeah,
being proactive. And
saves money in the long run.
Camera on your phone has changed how we can do things on the site.
Massively.
Just take photos, videos of everything you do, and because how many people don't write stuff down and they're going to try and remember it?
Yeah.
Like I've got a memory like a sieve.
I do that myself.
That's why I've got this remarkable in front of me because I write stuff down all the time.
Yeah.
It's getting the trades have to be more professional, and I believe the more professional they become, the less mistakes, less problems. That's good for their business. That's
correct, and that's something that we've made a move in with the Scribble Club with Heather is that planning and that communication, having the confidence to ask as well. And definitely. I think that's something that women specifically struggle with. It's scary and it can be overwhelming, but only because of what's been done previously. Yes. And there's a new change and a new happening there. And Heather, what's your thoughts in regards to what we can provide as designers and architects to women as our clients as well as fellow project workers, what we can actually do in the industry?
I think it's just the way we approach things. So even if it's a tone of voice or the way that we approach it or a calmness, I think particularly in building sites, that can be really hectic. Particularly a commercial site, you can have 30 or 40 contractors all in just a small room, all bustling around, treading on top of each other, that sort of thing. But in terms of us talking to females, we can teach them the language to talk to tradies and be comfortable with doing that, and not necessarily assertive to the point where it's aggressive or forthright or anything like that. It's more about saying, look, we're all humans. We all just want to work together. So how can we do that? But from a female perspective, a really interesting study was done many, many years ago about design, and particularly in any sort of large residential or even commercial building, that male architects particularly design for the outside of the building and females design from the inside out. So they're polar opposites. So that's why we always joke about the Crown casinos, the giant towers in the air were male-dominated designs, whereas female designs would be going, well, what's the inside going to be like? How's it going to work? How's it going to feel? What are we looking for? And so it's, I think you knew I was going with the tower, but anyway.
Yeah, we've all got the giggles.
I've never thought of that. I could go further with a few other features on that building, but I won't go there.
We're only new friends in the room.
Yeah, that's right. So without being too particular about it, but yeah, it is very much a thing. And particularly you'll find a lot of the award-winning buildings, particularly large commercial buildings, where it's been a particularly male-dominated type design, it is about how flashy it looks and all the stick-on bits on the outside. It's a bit like your Maserati or your Ferrari.
I was about to go the cars.
Yeah.
I was going to go down the car route. Guys, the cars, they're going to pimp them up a bit more.
Yeah. We want a comfort and space. Yeah.
Yeah, whereas they take the car analogy one step further. Females will go, well, it's got a drink holder, it's got a radiator, it's got my CDs, I've got a seat warmer, I've got all the things that I want that make my
But does it sound good?
Yeah.
Well,
Has it got a
that's when you
stick
turn
shift?
the radio on.
You know?
Exactly.
If it's too loud, I don't want that. Like, I want to be able to...
No, it's got to rock. Yeah.
You're going to be outnumbered him, Frank.
Yeah, I think it was Toyota that actually designed a car with a heel space specifically for women so that when they were wearing high heels, because you can't wear high heels and drive if your foot's in the wrong position, they actually created a crevice so that they made a car specifically for females so that they could be wearing high heels and drive. So
Light bulb just got in my head. That makes so much sense.
I just had this vision of Frank trying to drive his car with some high heels on.
I try not to wear my high heels when I go out, though.
Guess what Frank will be doing on the weekend now? He'll be testing that concept.
Yeah.
I'll be ringing you. Can I borrow a pair of your stilettos? I'm going to drive the car.
Mine won't fit you. I don't have that big a feet.
Or even worse, their heel jams under the accelerator and can cause a real drama. So that was, there you go. So, but to take the car analogy one step further, people, this is not just females, but people particularly will spend far more time putting in the time and effort to select a new car than they will to doing due diligence on buying a house, and yet the cost of the house is easily 5 to 10 times more than the value of the car that they're buying. So again, this is the thing that we're trying to say. We're saying, Kate, go through the due diligence, go through all the things, find all the issues and drill, to avoid you making mistakes, because when you buy a car, you pretty much know what you're getting. It's all, you know, you're hoping it's going to be mechanically sound, but houses are not like that. They're like a human body. They're a skeleton, they've got skin, they breathe, they take moisture in, all those sorts of things. And there's some very poor health outcomes if you've got damp in a house, if you've got mould. So one thing we're really trying to do is just say, look, here's a whole set of due diligence you do before you even buy. If your house is facing in the wrong direction, we all know developers, when they do a subdivision, not every block is equal. They deliberately sell off the bad blocks at the back facing the wrong way first because everyone's got a view, and then everything gets built out over time. So they're the sorts of things that we say, look, if you're going to go and buy something, give us 4 different sites and we can tell you, or we can help you ascertain which one is going to be good in the long term for also your health, because we know if we've got good natural sunlight, good ventilation, low mould, it's going to be healthy for you and your family. And the flip side of that is you can become very unwell if you live in a mouldy house that's facing the wrong way with poor ventilation. So part of that education as well is just saying, here's some simple design concepts that we learn, you know, Architecture 101 or Building Design 101, passive solar design, all those sorts of things, which the general population just don't know. And we were quite surprised, Trish and I, when we were starting with education, we thought that a baseline of where people were at, but really that's not taught in curriculum. So people understand the sun comes up in the east and sets in the west, but that's about the extent of what they think in terms of the sun's path. So it's really interesting that we can help educate people so that they're not making mistakes of buying a house on the wrong side of the street, in the, you know, down the hill that's going to be mouldy and wet and damp for the whole of winter. We say, no, look on the other side of the street, probably the same price, but these are all the attributes of that house. So, Trish, I guess that's probably the advantage of being female. We think from the inside out.
Yeah, it is good.
Well, that's very true. And I'm actually, that's music to my ears, what you're saying there, because we've been encouraging the same thing. We say research all the time. And you're right, everyone looks at cars and do so much more research and so much easier, but on a house, they can't tell because you can't see the features. Oh, the feature is it's got 2 bathrooms, rather than looking at, we're naturally drawn to sunlight though, aren't we?
Yeah, we are, and especially even more so in Tassie because we've.
Oh yeah.
And how many houses have we seen here in Tassie that are built the wrong way because they've grabbed a floor plan from the mainland and they've just plonked it down here in Tassie.
Well, the classic is they move out to Westbury and they want a view of the Western Tiers, which is amazing, which is south.
Yeah.
And they get no sunlight in their living.
Yeah.
And we've done a few. We've had to kind of design some around there, and it's hard, but we can make it work. And they've just got to live a little bit differently in the house and the spaces. Right. So it can be done. So an architect or a designer can certainly help you with that. But like when you're looking at buying, I couldn't agree more. And I'm amazed at some of the houses. You see some old houses and they've actually been designed really well for the sunlight. And you get other ones that are just rubbish.
Back to front.
Oh, it's just freaking awful.
And I think that's something that we like to promote too is trusting those professionals within the industry as well, like reaching out to the building surveyor or a building inspector to inspect the home before you purchase, having a good understanding of where
Wayne Gorman.
Yeah,
we had him on the show.
Yep.
He does building inspections, so much wealth of experience, and some of the stories he was telling us. We're going to get him back in for some more stories. It was just, it's not hilarious actually. Like, it's actually disturbing.
I think some brokers hate him because he stops the contract happening.
A real estate agent really don't want him. And there's I know if you guys hop on ABC News in Tasmania, there's been some particular stories on ABC News where the real estate agents are using their own inspectors, whether they're licensed or insured or not, and tell them to use their report to buy it, and they've bought a piece of rubbish that doesn't have permits. And it's terrible. And I hate people being caught out, and because they've done their research, they've done the due diligence, and someone's falsified or not pushed them in I don't know how you can live with yourself.
It's a conflict of interest, isn't it?
Oh, it is massive.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the other side of that is that is when you get a report like that and you see these words or these acronyms or this language that you're not familiar with, and it's helping interpret that, and then having the confidence to ask the questions, what that means or what it's about, or why have I got this? Can it be fixed?
Yes, can it be fixed?
Yeah.
And in some cases it cannot. And
that's very costly.
Oh, it breaks my heart seeing that. It's just awful.
Especially as someone on their first home purchase.
Well, not even that. Mum with some kids or a family that's struggling, and it's just so wrong, and they're stuck with this stuff.
Yeah, and legal works. Let's not get started there. There's a whole other podcast.
We've already done one on that.
Yeah, and there'll be a few more going forward.
Yeah.
And I've got some good pictures coming up from the website of a real doozy we've been asked to help fix.
Yeah, gosh. Oh, that's
structural plaster.
And it's different in different parts of Tassie, in different parts of Australia, is how those challenges can come across. So in Tassie, we're very fortunate. We don't have to think about termite damage, whereas on the mainland or on the Big Island, like we like to call it, there's those things, additional things that have got to be checked out.
Yeah, that's another world for you guys, termites.
Yeah.
Have you heard of Singapore ants? So they're another particularly nasty one. So they're these really horrible ants, quite large, and they will eat electrical cables. So they eat up through cables into switchboards and take out whole houses.
Are you pulling my leg? Are you
absolutely
serious?
Not. Absolutely, 100% serious. In northern parts of WA, I had a house that had an infestation that we had to get rid of, thankfully just in time before it ate through the entire switchboard. But over there, the first inspection they do in the switchboard is for any type of ant movement, because the ants are attracted to the electrical cables, and that can absolutely decimate the whole house, can crawl right through the ceiling space, eat out all of your cabling as well.
Used to worry about rats and mice.
What is wrong with these?
How are they hungry enough to eat electrical cable is my question.
There's better things out there, surely.
Surely.
Oh, I can understand the timber. That's all natural.
Yeah. Bit of fibre.
But gee. What type of ants were they again?
Singapore
ants.
So
and there was also the
brought them in.
fire ants as well.
The fire ants.
Fire ants.
fire ants. So they can infest your grass, and they're incredibly nasty because they bite people, and then there's people that can't go in their backyards because of these infestations. So there's also it goes with that. Whenever English people come to Australia, they're like, everything here is going to eat you or kill you.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff here that can be
But we're tough and we survived.
But Tasmania's got their own special ant. We've got our jack jumpers here.
Yeah.
And
but they don't eat our homes.
No, but they will kill you if you're allergic. So, Australia, come move to the lucky country.
Yeah.
We've got the best spiders, snakes, ants. Yeah. What else have we got? Oh, drop bears.
But a lot of a lot of it's imported, those Singapore ants. Like they're not native, are they? Like I'm guessing by the name.
No. So I guess one of our last messages that we'd probably like to wrap up with is if people are looking at buying their home or renovating a home, think of it, it's the single biggest investment most people make in their lifetime. And yet it's very poor due diligence. Even consider using a buyer's agent potentially if you're new to it and you're not sure what you're looking for. I've heard plenty of stories where people have bought in areas that are flood prone and they can't now, flood, bushfire, all those sorts of things with our insurances. People can't get insurance. It's all too late after the effect. So we're really big on the due diligence, and particularly in home, because that's all your life savings and probably the biggest thing, and you'll be paying it off for quite some time. So really be careful about what you're getting into and make sure you have a good understanding. And unfortunately, what we see people do is buy an emotion and say, I love it, it's gorgeous, I have to have it, and they haven't done enough due diligence. So that's my big takeaway for today for anybody that's listening to the podcast. So Trish, have you got a takeaway?
Oh yeah, just I think some of your experience, Heather, in regards to real estate. Like Heather's got a lot of investment properties, and what the background of buying in the right area and what you're going to input, like what sort of money you're investing in those properties, whether investment or your own home, and not overdoing it. And how many times we've seen people overcapitalise, and that can be through spending money in areas that they shouldn't, or that you'll never see a return on. So I think that's part of our drive home message as well.
No, that's great.
All right, so thank you so much, Trish and Heather, for coming in today. Where can we find you for anyone that wants to learn more about the Scribble Club or the Sketchy Ladies podcast?
Don't you love that name?
It's very cool.
That is brilliant.
It's so sketchy to me.
We always got to do a dad joke.
I try to.
Well, we're on the main platforms, so Facebook, Instagram, and even Pinterest, because we like to drive home the design of utilising Pinterest to help develop your own design. So it's at not the Sketchy Ladies. We're at the Scribble Club on all those platforms, and then Spotify is probably our favourite area for our podcast. So the Sketchy Ladies, and search your podcast for that.
Amazing.
We're on Apple too. Apple as well.
Apple Podcasts.
And our website, scribbleclub.com. Just .com. Yep.
You had to think about that.
I did.
We've got some free resources there, so if people want to come on board, just come and grab some free resources. Every month we're having different types of downloads, so they can get a lot of free information, because we're all about education. We're all about giving lots of ways to people so that they can have better homes, and we really want everybody to have a beautiful, wonderful, practical, healthy home, and we're just here to help women in particular achieve their dreams. So thank you so much, Frank and Amelia, for having us on the podcast. It's been a blast. Trish, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Frank and Amelia.
Thanks for joining us. It's good to catch up again.
Yeah.
And well done, guys, with your podcast. That's absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
Yes, so everyone,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening, everyone. The Sketchy Ladies podcast, definitely check that out. Until next time, this is the Building Design Primetime Podcast.
You're listening to the Building Design Primetime Podcast.